Hey, everybody. So I have with me today Lea Fuentes, and she is a manifestation coach and hypnotherapist. And welcome.
Hello, thanks for having me.
Yeah, thanks for coming. So I found Leah on Instagram actually because I was searching for a manifestation coach, both for, to kind of talk about this with clients and just seeing if this would be something that clients would be interested in. But also, I wanted to find someone for myself personally to help me with. I have major stage fright with doing mostly like TV interviews and talking to large groups. So I sought her help for that, and it was hugely helpful. And so I really have been wanting to have her on to kind of just pick her brain about manifestation in general and how all of you can use it for manifesting a relationship and love. So tell us more about how you work with clients and how, I guess we'll start there, how you work with clients on finding a relationship.
Yeah, so the primary core of the work that I do with clients is a pretty equal blend, I would say, of hypnotherapy and coaching. And pretty much the main thing that I work with people in relationships is figuring out exactly what they're looking for. I think that's a huge piece. And then also working around any limiting beliefs they might have about love or relationships, because sometimes we don't even realize that we are carrying some of those. I think, especially with relationships, they can be a little bit hidden.
Yeah.
So you don't need to know those answers when you come to do work with me, but that's some of the discovery work that we do together in the process.
Yeah, and it worked that way for me too, where I realized I have all these blocks with certain things in my life, specifically around career and confidence and how I project myself and all of that. And it was so helpful to kind of not, I don't want to say analyze, but kind of really dive into why I'm doing that and why I have those blocks and what they actually are. And I feel like people really block themselves from relationships, and not just relationships, but finding the right the right person,
Yeah.
blocking the person that's actually truly great for them.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Definitely. I mean, there's so much stuff that we can pick up unknowingly through childhood and things like that, right? And that's kind of where my hypnosis piece comes in, is like we're in the hypnotic state from the ages of 0 to 8. And that's kind of why they say kids are like sponges. So we're so impressionable to our parents' relationships, the relationships we see around us. And that, yeah, can have these really hidden belief systems that affect sort of like the lens, I like to call it, that we see our relationships through, sometimes the way we project in relationships. So it's really interesting with manifestation, especially with relationships, because we can't manifest for the other person. So it's like, what can we do to attract that person? And sometimes it is like tangible things of figuring out who that person is, but usually the missing key is that deeper piece of like, how do I need to show up, or what do I need to shift inside of me? um,
Mhm.
because on the conscious level we can even feel like we're doing it, but sometimes unconsciously the unconscious mind is still blocking those
Yeah.
desires. So
Yeah.
that's another huge part of the work that I do, is like, you might be there consciously already, but we get the unconscious mind on board, so there's like a really, like, it's congruent. And
Mhm.
manifestation is all about, like, putting out the energy of the thing you want to attract. So it helps, really, like, it just makes it a very powerful energy and magnetism for those desires.
Right, right. And Leah and I talked a lot about how I felt like for my situation too, and I'm sure it's like this with people in relationships where I knew exactly what I was doing. Like I knew I was blocking myself from certain things, but I couldn't get myself out of that, the norm, I guess, like the status quo.
Yeah.
So working with Leah and going under hypnotherapy, it was like she was working on all these things on my subconscious mind, which was, I mean, it's like it's almost like you're jumping, years of work that you could be putting into all of this and just getting right to it, right? I mean, am I saying that right? I mean, that's sort of how I thought of it.
Yeah, well, I love that that is the perception that you took from it because hypnosis really does kind of expedite the process for people. And I mean, that's why I do it. I think it's sometimes we spend 5, 6 years like tirelessly trying to heal and grow and bring these things into reality. And it's like, even then, we can be doing so much work, but we get to a point where we're just like, okay, like, what else can I do? Sometimes it can feel
Mhm.
that way, and especially
Yeah.
with relationships, I think it can really feel that way, right? If you have had a couple relationships that just like it still wasn't your person, it can really feel like you're hitting a wall. And so the coolest part about hypnosis is that it is kind of quick. So it does, in a sense, expedite that process. And it's because we are working directly with the part of the mind that has those belief systems, right? Because, like, like therapy, I mean, a lot of people who struggle in relationships, they might be going to therapy, and therapy is
Mhm.
so good at helping you make sense of things. And hypnosis is kind of like, yes, it can be the piece to help you make sense of what's happening. And, or it could also just be the piece where you've already made sense and you're like, I'm ready for the change. Like, I'm ready for that next piece to click and actually like open the door for the thing
Right.
you're calling in.
Right, right. That's so interesting. Yeah, and I feel like, I mean, I know for myself with relationships, after I got out of my marriage, you can recognize like, oh, I keep going for this type of person. I keep going for this type of person. But if and that's great if you recognize that, because that's the first step. But then you
Yeah.
can still keep doing it unknowingly. Like you think that you're not going for that person, but actually you still are doing the same thing over and over again, and probably getting into that part of your consciousness and figuring out how to I guess veer away from going for that typical type that is not right for you.
Yeah, yeah, totally. Because I mean, when you look at the unconscious mind, like in our day to day at the conscious level, we have an idea of what's good or bad, but at the unconscious level, there's no idea of good or bad, right? Even if you are attracted to really messy relationships or people who aren't good for you, at the unconscious level, it still could be considered like neutral. It's like it's just its goal is to keep you the same. And
Hmm.
so that I think is it can be really difficult because then when you're leaning into a relationship that is healthier for you, it could still feel wrong. It could still feel off. It could still feel wrong.
Hmm.
And you might
Hmm.
still have signals coming up like that something's weird, even in the healthy situation. And then you might not have those signals in something that's maybe not what you want to go for anymore, right? It's not always unhealthy, but maybe that person that's not right for you anymore
Yeah,
because
yeah.
it's what's normal. And then later you realize in retrospect. So, like a huge piece of that is rewiring what we actually are kind of drawn to. So, a lot of times we might say, well, I just want to feel like happy. And I know that a big part of our work was discovery, right? Like, what does happiness actually mean to you?
Hmm.
Because for one person, it could be, like a relationship that's fun and spontaneous and like a lot of independence and freedom. And for someone else, it can be, like family values and stability and like, I want to have kids and
Hmm.
all of that
Hmm.
stuff
Hmm.
plays into it, right? So really taking it one level deeper can make the hugest difference,
Right.
for what we actually feel comfortable gravitating towards.
Right, right. Yeah, that's so true. So, and one thing that I hear a lot with my clients, a lot, is, I'm never going to meet someone. I'm not meeting anyone in real life. I'm not meeting anybody online. Online dating isn't going to work for me. It doesn't work. I only meet, weirdos and jerks, and it's like all the things that you keep saying. And sure, that a lot of people feel that way, but I think what I try to tell people is like the more you're telling yourself that, the more that's what's happening, right? And I mean, in my mind, and I know that like everybody can say like think positively, but it's hard when you've been like, online dating, for example, for years and years and years, and you still haven't met your person or even anybody that you were interested in, never mind your soulmate or anything. So I think people get so discouraged, and then they start that negative reel in their head of, why this isn't going to work. So what is your belief on that? And, I guess how can people start to shift that other than working with you? How can people start
Yeah.
to shift that?
Yeah. So, like just touching on, my thoughts about all that, it's definitely true. We are reaffirming when we verbalize a lot of our reality. And that's where manifestation is, you know, it's like talked about on the internet and stuff, that you have to be positive all the time. And it's not to say that if those things are happening to you that you have to like deny your reality or have like toxic positivity. It's
Mhm.
okay to like work through those things. You just don't want that to be like, you don't want that to be your primary language, right? The primary way that you're talking to yourself and the thoughts you're telling yourself. It's perfectly okay to like journal out all the things you're done with. Like, I'm done being in relationships like this. I'm done going on dates that feel this way. I'm done, universe. I want something different. That is
Mhm.
totally okay. Like, your journal is like for you to have those cathartic moments and like get all of that stuff out. I really actually encourage people to get it out. Otherwise,
Yeah.
it is going to keep coming in those thoughts and those loops.
Right.
Um,
Right.
and I feel like manifestation, it's really cool that manifestation has grown so much over the past, I'd say like past 5, 10 years. I don't know how long ago The Secret came out. It's
Mhm.
still evolving, right? It's still becoming more fine-tuned. Um, and relationships are still not as talked about with manifestation, I would say, right? It's so easy to get all this content around being positive with career and living your dream
Mhm.
life. But
Mhm.
relationships specifically, it's still a little more up to you to take those principles and then apply them specifically in the category of relationship. So
Mhm.
I think that it's totally doable, but it does take a little more on our end to say, okay, I'm noticing this pattern and I'm going to apply what I'm learning.
Right, right. So I'm glad you mentioned journaling because this is something that I'm sure all of my clients are so tired of me telling them to journal, but it really was so helpful with my process in online dating. And and I'm not a big journaler. I really am not. Like I've gone through phases of my life where I have and I haven't, and mostly have not. But during my online dating time, I needed an outlet to like talk about the crazy things and also like the what I'm kind of feeling around it all. And finally I just was like, I'm going to write down. I didn't read about this or anything. I was just like, I'm going to write down all the qualities that are really really important to me and forget about the superficial things. I'm really going to get down to the nitty gritty. So I did that and I came up with a list of like maybe 12 things. And then from then on, I really felt like I kind of was getting closer and closer and closer to the right person. So then every person I dated after that was like more closer to what I was really looking for. Not to say that I didn't have like the odd, off date here and there, but generally like the people that I was dating for more than a couple of dates, it was getting closer and closer to the person that I really wanted to be with. And then I met Yoav. So in my case, I really, it really did work for me. And I've met other people too that has really worked for. I don't know if there was another interview I did with another, she's a divorce coach, but she also met her husband online. And she made a list of 92 things.
Oh my gosh.
And her husband, they got married. So her new husband, he was 87 out of the 92, apparently. And I was like, okay, that makes me feel better about my list of 12 because I was like, am I being obsessive? Like, is this too many things? But I was like, whoa, 92, that is a lot. But it really worked for her. And I feel like I've talked to other people too, that it's really worked for. So, in my opinion, I feel like journaling is so important to the whole process, whatever I guess you're going through, but, especially with manifesting the right relationship, I think it's so important. So, what are your thoughts, I guess, on that? I know you're big into encouraging journaling because after working with you, but what are your thoughts on how best to, I guess, express those things that you want in a partner?
Yeah, yeah. Well, first of all, I love that you found you out through your list. I think that's scripting is really powerful. And the reason, of course, like I'm in hypnosis, so I keep mentioning the unconscious mind, but it's such a big piece of it. So when we write with our hands, the hand is directly connecting to the mind. So it's like, yes, you maybe can't get to the depth with the unconscious mind, like with handwriting as you would with hypnosis. But over time, it can be really, really powerful still, and it can still have a huge impact, especially if you're journaling more often or you're going back and you're referencing that list to see like,
Mhm.
how is this going? Like reevaluating, you know? So, for people that are listening who don't really understand what we're talking about, this is called scripting. And essentially, you are writing out exactly what you want to call into your life. And there's
Mhm.
multiple ways you can do that, right? You can write literally a letter to yourself where you're imagining what your life looks like 6 months from now. You can be super descriptive, like, I'm in my living room. My new boyfriend brings me a coffee. It's my favorite. Like, there's caramel on top, right? You can get really like lavish with this.
Mhm.
I like to say you're almost building a movie, right? With your journaling. And or
Right.
you can also do it really simple, like how Alyssa did, where I'm just gonna write out exactly what I want, like cut and dry, like put those qualities, and I'm just gonna keep calling those things in. And some things that I like to encourage my clients to do when it comes to listing or scripting is to always include your parameters, right? Like I had a client recently who she had written in her list prior to meeting me that she wanted to meet someone who was obnoxiously giving. And she did meet someone that was obnoxiously giving. She was like, it makes me so uncomfortable, Leah. Like, he always is buying me things, et cetera, et cetera. And so I told her, I said, you need to put a parameter. So I want someone that's very giving, but maybe also is like making sure that they are comfortable with giving that much and it's like within their boundaries and things like that, right? You could
Mhm,
say,
mhm.
I want someone who's really independent and also prioritizes me.
Right.
Otherwise, you might manifest something, and sometimes the universe is funny like that. She's like, gives you a wink, like, hey, this is what you wanted, right? And you're like, oh no, like I didn't put my order in right.
Right,
I
right.
forgot to say, like, no onions, I forgot to put that piece in
Yeah.
there. So,
That's so funny. Yeah, actually in my book I said something like I can't remember the exact wording, but it was like, you're not ordering a burrito, but really like, but maybe you are sort of ordering a burrito. Maybe I need to edit that. But like I was saying, like, make sure you're specific and like be specific, but you're not ordering a burrito. Maybe I need to change that.
well, I think, yeah, it doesn't need to be like overly specific, but just when there's characteristics like that could kind of have two roads to them. Those are the
Yes.
ones, like if you're just like, I just want someone who's kind. I mean, I think you could put kind and kind of, with other characteristics like that. You don't necessarily need to specify like what kind of kind you want them to be,
Yeah, yeah.
unless it's important to you, right?
Well,
If it's like a
I'll
love language thing, then maybe.
right. Yes, yeah, that's true actually. Well, I'll give you a good example of how I the one, I guess, mistake I made when I made my list for Yoav. One of my things was that they are motivated, and motivated, and not, I didn't use the word ambitious, but basically that was like the gist of it. And what I didn't mention is like that they wouldn't be a workaholic.
Yeah, yeah.
And Yoav is a total workaholic. And, I've learned to deal with it. But for the first like 6 months of our relationship, I was like, oh boy, like, is this how it's going to be all the time? And it is all the time. But, and there's certain things that you can live with and certain things you can. And I realized that I could live with that. But I wish I was more specific about
Yeah, yeah.
the motivated, ambitious part. I was like, maybe not
Totally.
quite that motivated.
Yeah, you're like, love them for it, but next time, maybe a little tweak on that one.
Yeah, yeah. A
So,
little bit of downtime would be nice.
yeah.
But yeah, I think that and it really did get me thinking about, you know, um, because I talk a lot about like, the boxes that we used to check that are maybe not the right boxes to be looking to check, like the unimportant things that you think are so important. Like with my ex, like, for me, I really wanted somebody tall and creative also, because I'm a creative person, and he was both those things, but then there's all these other things that weren't right for me at all. So I talk a lot about like making sure you're checking the right boxes. And I think that doing this really is helpful, scripting, as you called it. It's so helpful to for yourself, like not just for calling in what you want, but I think it's also just helpful for you to get clear on what is really important to you. And I
Yeah.
think that it can get clouded by, again, like the superficial things. So yeah, and that's a tough one to get people to get away from, I guess, is the nice way to like there's so many people that really cling to a certain, like looks wise, like a certain type. And, and that's not necessary. I mean, you might end up clicking so well with somebody who's, who isn't your typical type looks wise. And if you don't even give that person a chance, you'll never know. And it's really hard to get people to kind of stray away from that. But that's why I feel like hypnotherapy would be so great for some of these people that, to really get in there to their unconscious mind and help them shift that.
Yeah, yeah. Because again, I think it goes back to like, what do we really value? Like, what do we really want? And sometimes, especially if relationships haven't been working out, or we're a little walled up. I'm not saying that everyone's going to feel that way. Just sometimes it can feel that way when we've had a couple dates or relationships that haven't worked. It's easy to start to almost get a little more picky when we're walled off, and a little
Mhm.
more like have a little more assumptions and a little more like precaution and judgments in that mix. Like I think it's really important too for people.
Yeah.
It's like if you're going to start this process, like let's start from scratch almost, right? Go into this with an open mind, and it's like, okay, I'm going to start scripting and manifesting like this is a
Mhm.
new journey for me, and try to let go of the superficial stuff as much as you can, and really tap into values. Like, I mean, you probably can speak on this as much or more than me, but I think values is like the most important piece that holds relationships together. So really making sure that that's something that's probably in your scripting, because sometimes you can have a really rich relationship with someone, but a true like life mate, that's the piece that's very important, and as well as the characteristics is like, what do you guys think is super important in your path together?
Mhm.
And another piece of that is like with manifestation is just really being comfortable saying yes and no to the things that are and aren't for you. And this is a
Mhm.
bit of a journey, right? And it's like all things,
Mhm.
right? Even when you manifest a job, right? It's really hard to for people who like own a business to say, I'm gonna leave corporate, I'm quitting. It's the same thing in a
Yeah.
relationship. It's
Yeah,
hard
it
to maybe leave
is.
something that's good enough or good for better and amazing. So
Right.
just like really having faith in the thing you want,
Yeah.
believing in yourself or your intuition is real.
Yeah.
And that
And
little birdie that you hear is real.
yeah, and
Go ahead.
actually, I think that's an important thing. I'm glad you just mentioned that too, is really believing that it can happen. Like really believing in it. And not just like, I want this to happen. I wish this would happen. It's like really believing that it's going to, right? I mean, do you,
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah. Yeah, really being able to leave. And that, again, that's where the hypnosis is super powerful, because a lot of manifestation talks about think it, believe it, feel it that it's true, get in the
right.
frequency that it's true, and then it'll come to you. And so a lot of people might say, like, I've never felt that before. And especially with like a soulmate relationship, right? It's like there could be more than one, but if you're looking for like your one person that you haven't felt that before,
Mhm.
it's hard to tap into something you've never felt. So the hypnosis kind of softens that a little bit, and
Uh,
we're able to get you in the frequency a little bit. I mean, what would you say, right? We kind of open up that frequency within you so it feels more true to you, if that makes
mhm,
sense.
mhm. Yeah, I know. I totally hear that. I felt like that. I definitely felt that working with you on my things for sure. Yeah, so this has been super helpful. I feel like it's going to be really encouraging for people who are dating. So tell everybody how they can find you and work with you if they want to.
Yeah. So the best point of contact through social media is Lea_Fuentes. That's my handle. And my name is spelled Lea. And then as far as my business page, you can look up clarityandmagnetism.com/start. And that talks a bit about what the work will look like. It's also in my bio, though, if you guys just can find me on social.
Mhm.
I'm also for questions. Like, I know some people are like, you can't talk to me unless we're working together. Like, I'm so sorry, but like, you can always ask me questions. I'm happy to be a resource, whether it's just like, how does hypnosis work if you're curious, or if it's
Yeah,
more about
yeah. And
manifestation.
actually, and if you can definitely go to her page. If you follow her on Instagram, you do a lot of reels and videos on talking about it. So I think it's really helpful. So you should definitely follow her. um,
Yeah.
if you want to find out more.
Yeah, definitely.
Well, thank you so much. This is great. And I'll be seeing you soon. And everybody should follow Leah at Leah_Fuentes.
Beautiful. Yeah, it
Okay.
was so much fun, Alyssa. I
All
will
right.
see you soon, love.
Thanks. Okay. Bye.
Bye.